What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to another live stream edition of the North End podcast, MLS SuperDraft edition. My name is Zach Graham, your host here in the North End, joined, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. His name is Ian Michaud, and we call him I thought you'd appreciate that. I think we got to turn the volume up on that. But Charlie boy, how you feeling?
Oh my God, I'm conflicted right now. Obviously, not too thrilled about the pick, but that was the greatest intro we've ever had. My face there, just basking in the glory. That was great with the Charlie boy in the background.
Yeah.
Oh
in
man.
Here. We see Brian in here. See all our other buddies in here. Austin FC has made their first round selection, and you kind of said it off the top there, a little bit disappointed. And so I guess let's talk about that first. I gotta say, man, when Dallas traded up to the 3 spot, which came right at the beginning of the Apple TV broadcast, they sent $300K in GAM and their 15th overall selection to enter Miami. Which we thought that Miami pick, right? We had been kind of targeting that is definitely the most movable pick out of the 4 in front of us. And the fact that Dallas had jumped up there, I got this pang in my stomach, like, oh, they're going to steal one of the 2 guys we want. It's kind of some off the board picks at 1 and especially 2. A guy who I don't think either of us knew who he was going to Colorado at 2. And then Dallas goes Logan Farrington at 3, the forward, I believe, out of Oregon State, who I think Landon and Jeremiah had talked about him. Phil was asking about him yesterday. So, like, over the top excited for those 2 GA guys to be available with just 1 pick in front of us. And Kamani Stewart-Baines does go to Colorado at 4. So Stephen Anorgianfi, that's been our guy for a couple weeks now. But Austin passes on him. And so I'm not disappointed I'm just disappointed that I guess we were wrong. And I had built up so much excitement for the backflip celebrations and just the upside of that kid. So let's talk about our draft pick here in a minute, but let's put Stephen Anorgianfi in the past here. What are your thoughts on us passing on the lone GA player left in the draft?
You know, it was shaping up for us to get the guy that you and I wanted. But there's a reason that you and I host a podcast and aren't involved in, the front office of MLS dealings. So It was setting itself up nicely. And I was with you too, man. Like, the excitement was starting to build. We were texting each other. I had the live draft board going on while I was getting some work done here and really getting excited. And, from what we discussed about the kid, the Stephen Anorgianfi, I believe is the last name, right? Or the 2 last names. I was really excited too. Speed, goal scorer. We got the scout breakdown from some degenerates who are really, looking into the class here. And I thought he would have been a great addition. But again, it is trust the process. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. We went in and took Nate Jones there. And, first thing you and I did was go ahead and see where he was on top drawer rankings. Comes in at 99. So he was down the board there. Again, I don't know how much credence we're going to put into those rankings, particularly not knowing what goes into their analysis. And then we went into his profile, see where he's been, where he comes from, where does he go? Cotton Eye Joe. So, going to be excited, going to have to figure out where he's going to have to fit in. If we're going to, if he's going to be an FC2 guy, if we're going to call him up for some, some spot work when it becomes available. But looking forward to learning more about this kid and hopefully that he's a good fit for the club here.
Yeah, I would just echo your sentiments there on, like, of course we were hyped up at the possibility of getting one of those 2 GA guys. But again, there's a reason we're sitting here talking to each other, and there's those 5 folks in the draft room that we saw on the broadcast making the selection. They were out there at the combine and everything and saw these guys, but it is surprising to me that we got this guy, Jones, who was ranked so low. And again, I think his stock probably skyrocketed after the combine. So he clearly had a nice, 3 or 4 day outing there in Phoenix 2 weeks ago. Good to see H in here.
If you look at the moves that we made prior to this, right, with Kippy being involved in the trade for Hot Air, this could have been a part of the plan where it's like they preferred Hot Air as a more, polished kind of attacking option than Steven. And, you get the Kip replacement potentially with Nate Jones here. So maybe that's part of the plan, what we're looking to do going forward. I don't know, not that I did, a ton of research on the prospects that other Austin FC pods or fans or the Twitter spaces were looking at. I didn't see Nate Jones on anyone's radar, really. So I'm going to have to go ahead and trust in the scouting department and trust that this is the dude that they had targeted for a little while. And like you said, he could have, bolstered his draft stock with the combine. He seems to have a solid frame for the center back position, coming in at 6'3", under 200 there. So, that's encouraging. And it's really just going to be for me, how does he fit into the rotation for the first club? Is he going to be just a pillar of the defense on the FC2 team? So there's a lot to see, lot that's going to happen with this Nate Jones pick that we need to, have first before we can really truly evaluate, his profile.
Well, I'm going to let this run. We've got his highlights up here on the screen. So I'm just going to let Nate Jones' highlights from this past season go as we continue to discuss Austin FC's newest player. You see getting on the board there with a header, right? And this is a goals segment, not just singular goal. So obviously a threat in the air. You mentioned 6'3", good size kid there, and left-footed. And so as you were talking, I was going back through some of the mock drafts that we've been perusing over the last couple days. Top Drawer Soccer's mock draft that had us taking Logan Farrington at 5. They had Nate Jones at 3 to enter Miami. So again, I think this is maybe some of these mock drafts were informed by these folks that are connected and maybe heard rumors that this guy was going to be highly sought after in this draft. I know that we talked about Kip Keller in the past, and that was before we started the podcast. So I think it was just you and I discussing the draft in general at that time, but that traditionally center backs are the more sure things in the super draft. Because again, we know that this event is not comparable to your NFL draft, your NBA draft, where you're drafting. These first round picks are the most, valuable assets on your team, usually when you're picking this high. But so Jones 3rd in the Top Drawer Soccer mock draft and 7th on the MLSsoccer.com mock draft. So this is a guy that was projected to go, top 10 by multiple outlets that are, in the know. And left-footed center back, we know we have an affinity for those. And any other thoughts before we dive more into Nate Jones and his background?
I mean, just looking at the clips here, the highlights, you see his play in the air and the crosses that are coming in, which is part of the style that we play. And maybe that's part of his profile that really attracted him to us. But as you mentioned, him moving up the draft boards throughout this process doesn't make it seem like this is any sort of reach. I know that we had a couple picks before him where we were like, who is that? Where is he coming from? So, from those clips there, it looks like he's got a superior vertical than Lojo for sure. We'll take that. In the box, active, left-footed center back. Again, I don't know how much we're going to see him this year for the first team club. But yeah, he looks like he's got some athleticism as well. Him moving up the board on those mocks does make me feel
absolutely. Yeah, same here, because like we noted, top drawer rankings. I also did a quick spin through the midseason ranks that we were using a month ago from Top Drawer. Of course, the postseason ranks came out a few days ago, and he crept up to 99th. I didn't see him on the midseason rankings. So we talked about, though, in the last couple episodes when we were using those rankings as a loose guide, right, going back through previous years, that they changed wildly. And while Top Drawer did nail a couple guys like Duncan McGuire, number 1 last year in their rankings, Other guys were all over the place. And Jackson in here noting the Moon Tower pod this morning, and that was appointment listening for me when I woke up, mentioned Nate Jones. So Landon was on it, and I can confirm Landon's reaction in a chat as soon as this pick was made was all caps. Let's go.
Nice.
So Landon is hyped. And myself and Mike Cragnola, I will echo Mike's sentiments here. He said, fuck off, Landon. This is your fault. Because Mike also wanted Stephen and Nord Giamfi. So let's talk a little bit more about Nate and his background, and then we can talk about what we see, what we foresee, I guess you could say, for Nate this upcoming year with our club. Junior, so spent 3 years, I believe, at University of Washington. Just this past second teamer, a part of the Huskies backline that held opponents to 144 shots and just 60 shots on goal all season. Appeared in all 20 matches, started 19 of them, had an assist versus number 5 Stanford in October, got the equalizer. We saw that on his highlights in the 86th minute against Oregon State, against Logan Farrington's team. That was his first career goal, then second goal of the season and career against CJ Fodry's San Diego State on November 6th. So if we look at his stats throughout his career, and let me pull up the career statistics, Nate, so he did, I guess he's a junior E, but this is his 4th season at Washington because of that COVID year, which has just caused all kinds of confusion in every NCAA sport in terms of the eligibility there. So 58 appearances through his 4 seasons, 41 starts, and really over the last 2 seasons, 38 appearances, 37 starts for Nate here. So obviously an experienced player. I did note that on the MLS or on both of those mock drafts that I was referencing, the MLSsoccer.com one says Washington program that produces quality professional center backs and top drawer soccer, who had him at 3 to Miami, said UW, aka Center Back University. So certainly a program that has churned out some MLS talent in the past. I'm not familiar with who that is. If anybody watching knows off the top of their head some Washington center backs, of course, we'll go after this live stream and try to figure out who these outlets are referring to. But yeah, anything else you found? I know in the 6 minutes we had between the pick and going live here, you were scouring the internets for more info on Nate. Anything else you wanted to add there?
I mean, you see him on the ball here, right? And it's like he seems confident on the ball. There's been a few situations where he's had some pressure situations and he's been able to relieve that pressure, particularly with like some long balls like this. So we like that. Understand that, you know, this is how Roto got his start, right? With the developmental guys, with finding these players who have high upside to come in and develop them. So I trust in that. I know that, you know, we had the new scouting department come in. I don't know how much they played into this decision, but again, those were hires that we were excited about from Roto. So we have to trust in that. I did see something interesting when I Googled his name there, or excuse me, I saw something interesting with Steven on his Instagram profile. There was some sort of connection to Claudio Reyna that was like
Nord Giamfi had a connection to Claudio
on his if you just Google him, one of the top 3 or 4 hits was his Instagram, and there's a Claudio Reyna's name pops up in the little blurb right there for the result. Also, you know, we looked at his experience with some club teams. He was with that Vermont team, which is a USL second league team. So he has some USL second league division experience. I'm encouraged, man. If Landon likes it, and I know it's not our guy, then I have to like it as well. And look, man, I'm enjoying watching these highlights here. This makes me want to go watch some soccer again.
Yeah, I know. We are not too far away from that. I believe we should expect the players to report to training camp. We pull up the calendar here. I think Friday, January 5th, which is 2.5 weeks away. So Rigoni's going to have to end that tour with LaPlaya. You know, at the E, I don't know if you saw, has been going around on tour with his band, I think, in South America, having a nice little month off here. But the boys will be back at St. David's Performance Center very soon. You mentioned that USL2 experience, right? He's still on the roster for Vermont Green FC. So I'm not quite sure the relation between being able to play. I assume that is like semi-pro. You're probably not getting paid for that because then you can't keep your NCAA eligibility still, right? Even with the NIL rules, if you're playing in a professional league,
you're not an amateur anymore, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's going through my mind right now is like, damn, if the Kip thing didn't work out, is this the pick? I mean, if the Kip thing did work out, is this the pick that comes in? You know, and it goes back to the fact that we're trying to revamp this roster entirely, and Kippy is one of the selections from the prior regime, and we moved on from him. I very much enjoyed and appreciated the return we got for him, and I'm hoping that this goes, a little better than the Kip Keller experiment went for Austin FC. And, he's got some line-breaking passes here. Again, confident with the ball at his foot. That lefty trajectory that he has with the passes going forward in the air seems nice. And like I said like I talked about on the last pod, that seemed to be part of the game plan that we were developing as the season progressed, particularly with Alex, with those long balls over the top. And I thought that would be a good pairing with Hader and his speed in space. So you see these long balls being played here by Nate, and I don't know if we'll see it, within that first year, but it does seem that there is some sort of cohesive plan with his style of play and the roster we're trying to fit, trying to build out here.
All right, so I've got some information up here on USL League 2 from USSportsScholarships.com. What are the benefits of playing in USL2 for college players? I'm just going to read. Oh.
Are you trying to watch Jake Swallen?
No, we're not. We would just like to keep it on our guy here, Nate Jones. Guess, ads everywhere. But I've got some information here on USL League 2 and how that could affect, or why that brings in guys like that. Playing in USL2 offers college players the opportunity to play at a high level of competition. College soccer is a great starting point for many young players, but the level of competition is often not as high as that in professional leagues. Playing in USL2 offers college players the chance to compete against more experienced and skilled players who have aspirations of playing professionally. USL2 teams are typically made up of a mix of college players as well as non-collegiate players. The college players will be exposed to different styles of play and tactics than they may be used to in a college environment. So it just kind of seems like an off-season type of I don't know if I even have a good comparison to this to a sport that you and I are more familiar with. Like maybe like WNBA, where like in their off-season, a lot of those players who are the best in the world go and play overseas in Europe, just to supplement not just their play, but obviously the income not the same there in the the income not the same here in MLS. Because I would imagine I guess we can try to move towards where we see Nate fitting in next year. I have to imagine he's going to sign a reserve minimum deal. I would be shocked if he's on one of those senior spots this coming year.
I would also be shocked if he was on one of those senior spots. And then you look at that FC2 club and the depth that they have on that back line and the prospects that we have back there. And that's pretty encouraging. Now, I'd have to say that USL League 2 probably is better than just your collegiate games because you're getting the pros mixed in as well as some college kids. So that's good experience for him to be playing at that level with some guys who are actually professionals and building that up in his offseason from UW. Again, encouraging that he is from Center Back University, which is usually a moniker I've heard for, quarterback U or DBU, whatever, for football.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think we're going to see him a lot with the first team, obviously. There again, look at that pressure on there, confident with the ball. We like that. Looks like he's got a little Sally Maz in him for sure.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think he's a little bit bigger than Sal, right? Yeah. And so let's I know we had a question here. Vanilla was saying Nate Jones play with FTO and have an FTO Center Back move up for the first team. I think you probably, again, I guess we could just say, I know you and I are pretty much in the same camp here where we don't think any of those FTO guys are really going to, quote unquote, graduate to the first team, at least this year. In my eyes, if there's anybody outside of, one of those guys we can tag with a homegrown deal, like Micah Burton, Val Noel is the choice for me.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a guarantee either. And I think just with the draft capital, like Sal was a third rounder, if I recall correctly, and he exceeded, I think, all of our expectations, helping lead Austin FC2 to the title this year. But I think Nate is much more likely to see first team minutes here than a guy like Sal. But I would be pleased to be wrong in the sense that maybe both of them have some appearances this year. But I feel like if we're getting into the Sally Maz territory, like starting at center back at least, we're in trouble. Like, and that's not a knock on Sal. That means that our other, like, we're spending what, $2 million on those top three center backs. We need those guys to freaking perform this year.
We need those guys to be healthy. We need Hedges to be healthy. We need Julio to be healthy. And as long as they are, these younger dudes are not going to crack that rotation, and I'm okay with that. It just, the caveat of it being like they got to be healthy is a big one. Yes, I think it's next pro for me, Phoenix. I think that we're probably a year and a half, 2 years away from seeing him.
Do you think he's going to sign a next pro deal though? Because I think if he's if we want to give him a reserve minimum salary, which I think is like somewhere in the 70s this coming year, we don't have that figure until they release it, or January or February, the league that is. I think we put, we have 6 supplemental spots left because this isn't a GA player, right? So he is not taking up a first team spot as of now, but we have 6 empty supplemental spots. So if he was going to sign on that reserve minimum salary, I would like that rather than an FCTO contract, because then we can call him back up at any time to be on the bench, to appear in a match, start a match if we're, in trouble in terms of our depth there. And like, I don't want to not give the kid some credit. Like, he might be good enough to play some first team minutes next year in the best case scenario.
I mean, absolutely. That would be fantastic. Again, it's just hard to gauge the level of competition we're seeing him go against here and how that translates into getting actual MLS minutes. What are we at? We're at a pick 11 now, and Steven's still on the board. So,
God, man, trade up, but go get him.
He's still on the board. Grayson Duty just got drafted. Great name there.
Yeah, that's a classic. I don't think we had come across that name in our research for this draft either. No. So Dylan's saying here, Sally Maz or Hafferty on the first. Yeah, I don't consider Joe a center back prospect at all for the first team, given his age and his physical stature. But completely agree on the Sal piece. And again, I think just on paper here, you got to have Nate over Sal because of the draft capital there.
I definitely agree. Now, obviously, like you said, this draft works a little different than your usual, larger your larger leagues here in the Americas,
the Americas.
Here in America. But man, I don't know, man. Him moving up the draft boards late and getting mocked at where he was, makes me think that there's definitely some potential. I just don't know, like potential for him to get first team minutes. I just don't know if we see it again. I think as the moves start to come in throughout the rest of this window here, and we start to see the roster get fleshed out, we will have a better understanding if this is somebody that we're going to try to rely on for some spot minutes here and there.
Pigeon here saying CJ was the only player from last year's draft that played for a USL team, right? If so, there's a correlation between USL experience and actual first team chances. I'm reading that as only player that we got out of the 4 from last year's draft. I have no idea about the draft class as a whole and who did or did not play USL coming into last year's draft. And again, there's a significant difference, I think, between First league, USL, USL League One, USL League Two. But again, I don't think it's a negative at all that we see Nate Jones playing USL2 in his downtime from Washington, because the kid is hungry. He's flying across the country to play for a team in Vermont. He is from the West Coast. Obviously, was at Washington. So,
do we have any information on if that's a particularly successful club in USL League Two? And because when we've been going through trying to evaluate talent to what the best of our ability, it's you have to tier off these leagues, and it's time and time again, USL, is above your next pro level of play.
So USL League 2 used to be the PDL, which is the league that the Austin Aztecs were in. For those, I know that was before your time here in Austin, but Austin Aztecs used to play down at House Park. Adrian Heath was actually their coach for a while, the ex-Minnesota United coach. In 2013 champions there were the Aztecs. They ended up becoming Orlando City. It's been USL League 2 for the last 5 years.
This has to profile as a league that's probably on par with the next pro league, maybe a spot below it, because you have straight, just regular college kids in there playing with the mixture of professional athletes. Again, we have to see the other moves that come in to really be able to gauge if this kid is going to be, called upon in emergency situations. Oh, there we go, Peach. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Solid club.
So, and that's what I don't know, is USL2 happening right now? I would imagine they'd be on the USL calendar, right? So they would start outside of the college season if that's part of the way they fill out these rosters. So that might have been last year's record. But regardless, if Nate is playing with that team and they're 10-3-1, they're doing well, at that level. So Ari's in here. Good to see Ari's. Was not drafting a GA kid a mistake, just not familiar with how well these college kids play. Ari's, we said kind of off the top, we are definitely disappointed that Stephen Anorgiamfi got past us there. But I think, again, most of that is just our amateur eye getting very excited for his athleticism, his youth, the GA tag being, basically free for the next, up to 3 years. And of course the backflip celebration. So the way that this Nate Jones kid was garnering respect in the mock drafts, I imagine he had a very good combine, and then there was probably some intel going into that, around just, buzz around the league in the back channels, where Nate Jones was highly sought after here as a center back prospect. So I don't think not drafting a GA player was a mistake. It's just not what I wanted the younger guy with the GA tag. But I fully trust that they have a plan for this Nate Jones kid. Because I'd imagine, dude, you have
a plan. I don't know if I would use the word mistake. Is it the most efficient way to flesh out this roster? I'm not sure. But again, I just have to put my faith in people who know much more about these players than I do, who can evaluate this talent much better than I can. And again, you just see him in the box here. You see him in the air. Even who?
Yeah. So Peach says it's just his current season. So who knows?
I did look at it. The dates were have passed.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that looks like
so then Peach also May, June, July season for Vermont Green. So that matches up. That is not just your USL schedule. That is condensed for the college summer.
Correct.
Right. So it's these guys. This is how these guys are spending their summer, which is,
I like that.
Kids going across the country to play more soccer in his downtime during the summer, outside of school. And that's better than, as somebody who spent off seasons in a collegiate career drinking beer and eating Wendy's. It is a lot better to be going and playing some semi-pro soccer over there. So yeah, man, I mean, it'll be interesting to see when and if he signs a first team deal. We'll see Nate, I would imagine, in 2.5 weeks here in Austin, at training camp. Anything else you want to add before we get out of here? I know it's the middle of the workday. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and join us tomorrow. Estimating a 1:30 start time. MLS 2024 schedule being released on Wednesday, so we will go live a half hour after that schedule drops. Give ourselves some time to kind of peruse the schedule, decide what we're going to talk about there, how we can organize it, and dive into the schedule and everything else that's been happening in the Austin FC universe over the past week. Anything else for you, E, before we get out of here? Talking about our newest player, Nate Jones.
Do we have any sort of precedent or potential timeline in regard to when we will see what contract he signs?
Let's see. We can go to, none of our first round picks have been, or our first pick in all three drafts have all been GA players to this point. So they were just guaranteed to be on the roster in that supplemental spot because GA is, you get that guaranteed deal. I guess we didn't get the other guys last year signed until much later because they were FC2 deals. That was after training camp had started for Val Noel. So I don't know. I don't know if Nate comes into camp if he doesn't have a deal. I'm not sure how that will truly work. I think for me, I'll just have to see the process play out unless somebody else has intel on it.
Yep, this looks like a waiting game in regard to what contract he's on, and I'm okay with that. We can wait, and I'm getting more excited about it. I've already forgotten about Steven. It looks like he's still available. So
is he really?
Maybe you and I were just way off.
Yeah, I guess. And if everybody else, I don't know. Kid got a GA. I mean, we've seen Austin trade up before in the past. I don't know if we have any GAM just sitting around to be able to go get him now.
I mean, to Ari's point about potentially it being a mistake, we've drafted these GA kids and with varying results of success. So I don't know if that's something that was in the back of their minds. I don't think so, with the fresh start, the new front office, the new scouts, the new management team. So it's I don't know if they felt like we had been burned before potentially. But look, man, I'm going to be rooting for this kid. I hope to see him for the FC2 club. Absolutely. I hope to see him for the first team eventually when that time comes. And I'm just excited, man. It's a top 5 pick.
Yep.
A guy who moved up draft boards. Many mocks had, or not many mocks, a mock had him go at 3. Pardon me. Landon was on him. So I'm excited. Yeah,
same. So we'll obviously have more on Nate Jones in the coming weeks. And I'm sure there's going to be some stuff, from the club. We'll be able to, I'm sure, the We Are Austin TV boys, I'm sure they're diving into his social medias already, making contact there, as are a bunch of other Austin FC fans. So we appreciate everybody tuning in and sticking with us here on this live stream edition of the North End Podcast. Back-to-back live streams aiming for 1:30 p.m. Central tomorrow to break down the 2024 regular season schedule. Hope to see you guys then. Enjoy your evenings, and we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, he's E. I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.
1, 2,